the outsider. In the tranquil suburb of Pinecrest, where tree-lined streets cradled homes filled with the hum of familial warmth, 12-year-old Nathan Whitman stood at the precipice of a new chapter. Middle school. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the neighborhood, but within Nathan's heart, shadows of apprehension loomed large. Born with a congenital condition that rendered his left leg weaker, each step he took was a testament to resilience, yet also a reminder of his difference. As he approached the imposing brick building of Pinecrest Middle School, a cacophony of adolescent voices filled the air. The scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the crispness of new textbooks, evoking a sense of beginnings. Yet, for Nathan, this was not just the start of an academic journey, but a foray into an unforgiving social arena. The initial days were a blur of unfamiliar faces and uncharted hallways. Nathan's gait, marked by a subtle limp, did not go unnoticed. Whispers trailed him like shadows, and sidelong glances became his constant companions. In the bustling cafeteria, the clamor of clinking trays and animated chatter seemed to crescendo as he passed, amplifying his sense of isolation. "Hey, look! It's the limping kid!" A voice jeered from a nearby table, followed by a chorus of snickers. The words pierced Nathan's fragile confidence, each syllable echoing his deepest insecurities. He lowered his gaze, the vibrant colors of the cafeteria blurring into a mosaic of muted tones. In gym class, the scent of sweat and polished floors filled the air. Activities that once brought him joy now became trials of endurance, not just physically, but emotionally. Peers hesitated to partner with him, their eyes reflecting a mixture of pity and disdain. The once inviting basketball court now felt like an arena of judgment, each missed shot a confirmation of his perceived inadequacy. Yet, amidst the overt mockery, what wounded Nathan most was the pervasive indifference. Classmates who neither taunted nor defended him became silent spectators, their inaction speaking volumes. During group assignments, he often found himself on the periphery, his contributions overlooked or dismissed. The isolation was suffocating, a constant weight pressing down on his spirit. At home, the atmosphere was a stark contrast. The aroma of his mother's cooking and the soft strains of hymns playing on the radio created a sanctuary of comfort. His parents, pillars of unwavering faith, enveloped him in love and encouragement. "Nathan," his mother would say, her voice gentle yet firm, "God has a purpose for you. Your worth is not defined by others, but by His love." Despite their reassurances, Nathan grappled with internal turmoil. In the quiet of his room, beneath the soft glow of a bedside lamp, he would open his Bible, seeking solace in the sacred words. Yet, passages that once brought comfort now seemed distant, their meanings obscured by the fog of his despair. "Why, Lord?" he would whisper into the stillness, tears tracing paths down his cheeks. The dichotomy between the external ridicule and internal strife created a chasm within Nathan's soul. He yearned for acceptance, for a sense of belonging that seemed perpetually out of reach. The vibrant world around him, filled with laughter and camaraderie, felt like a distant realm, separated by an invisible barrier he could not breach. In the depths of his solitude, Nathan began to build emotional fortresses, walls to shield his heart from the relentless onslaught of pain. Yet, with each brick laid, he also imprisoned his own light, the unique brilliance that was his true essence. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path shrouded in shadows. But within him, though dimmed, the flame of hope still flickered, awaiting the breath of faith to reignite its radiant glow. As Nathan transitioned into high school, the sprawling campus of Pinecrest High stood as both a beacon of new opportunities and a labyrinth of potential challenges. The red brick buildings, ivy creeping up their facades, were surrounded by manicured lawns where clusters of students congregated, their laughter and animated conversations filling the air. Yet, for Nathan, each day felt like navigating a minefield, where any misstep could trigger an explosion of ridicule or isolation. The overt taunts of middle school had evolved into more insidious forms of exclusion. In classrooms adorned with motivational posters and the faint scent of chalk, group projects became a source of anxiety. Peers would exchange uneasy glances when assigned to work with him, their reluctance palpable. Maybe Nathan can handle the bibliography, someone might suggest, subtly sidelining him from meaningful participation. The sting of being underestimated gnawed at his self-worth, each instance reinforcing the walls of his emotional fortress. Lunchtimes, once a reprieve, transformed into solitary rituals. The bustling cafeteria, with its linoleum floors and fluorescent lighting, became a theater of isolation. Nathan would find a secluded corner, the hum of conversations around him amplifying his solitude. The aroma of hot meals wafted through the air, but he often found his appetite diminished, replaced by a gnawing emptiness that food couldn't fill. Teachers, juggling the demands Nathan's words hung in the air, quiet but sincere. Ms. Clark smiled, her hands still working the clay as she gestured toward an empty stool near a worn but sturdy wooden table. "Well, you've found the right place," she said. "Feel free to sit. Or, better yet," she added, nodding toward the art supplies scattered across the room, "grab a pencil or paintbrush. You might find that creating something is the best way to escape." Nathan hesitated, his eyes scanning the room. The canvases, bold with color and brimming with emotion, felt foreign, yet magnetic. He approached a shelf stacked with sketchbooks and carefully selected one, his fingers trembling slightly. Taking a pencil from a tin cup, he perched on the stool and opened the blank book. For several moments, he stared at the empty page, the void mirroring his own sense of emptiness. Ms. Clark didn't press him, continuing her work but stealing occasional glances at him. Finally, Nathan began to sketch, a tentative line, then another. The pencil moved across the paper, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. When he finally paused, he found he had drawn a tree, gnarled, weathered, yet standing firm against the wind. Its branches reached upward as if defying the storms that sought to break it. "That's beautiful," Ms. Clark said, coming over to inspect his work. Her voice held genuine admiration. "There's so much strength in this. Have you been drawing long?" Nathan shook his head, surprised by her praise. "I used to, when I was younger, but I stopped." "Why?" she asked gently, pulling up a chair beside him. Nathan shrugged, unsure of how to put his feelings into words. "It just didn't seem important anymore. And I guess I didn't think I was any good." Ms. Clark tilted her head, studying him with thoughtful eyes. "Art isn't about being good or bad. It's about expressing yourself. And you, Nathan, have a voice that deserves to be heard. Why don't you come back tomorrow and explore it more?" Something in her words stirred within him, a flicker of excitement amidst the ever-present numbness. He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The next day, Nathan returned to the art room, unsure if he had found a refuge or merely a temporary escape. He entered hesitantly, clutching his backpack, his eyes scanning the room for Ms. Clark. She was seated at her desk, flipping through a sketchbook, When she saw him, she offered a warm smile, a silent reassurance that he belonged. "Good to see you again, Nathan," she said. "Come, sit. I have something for you." She handed him a blank canvas and a set of acrylic paints. Nathan ran his fingers over the surface, the blankness of the canvas feeling both inviting and intimidating. Ms. Clark sensed his hesitation. "It's just you and the paint," she said. "There's no right or wrong here. Just start." Nathan sat at a table by the window, the late afternoon sunlight streaming in and pooling around him. The distant hum of students in the hallway faded as he focused on the task before him. He dipped his brush into the blue paint, hesitating for a moment before applying it to the canvas. The stroke was shaky, uncertain, but as he continued, it grew bolder. He painted a sky, a deep, stormy blue with streaks of gold breaking through the clouds. Ms. Clark watched silently from her desk, her heart swelling as she saw the boy transform before her eyes. When Nathan finally set his brush down, he stared at the canvas, a mix of disbelief and pride in his expression. "That's incredible, Nathan," Ms. Clark said, coming over to stand behind him. "It's powerful. You've captured something raw and real." Nathan looked up at her, his cheeks flushing. "You really think so?" "I know so," she said firmly. "You've got a gift." For the first time in years, Nathan felt a spark of confidence. He returned to the art room the next day, and the day after that. Painting became his solace, a way to pour out the emotions he couldn't articulate. The room, with its scent of paint and faint echo of classical music from Ms. Clark's speakers, became his sanctuary. Each piece he created was a reflection of his journey, a field of wildflowers rising from charred earth, a lone tree standing against a fierce storm, a broken mirror pieced back together with gold. Ms. Clark encouraged him to experiment, introducing him to pastels, charcoal, and even sculpture. "Nathan, art is like life," she told him one afternoon. "It's messy, unpredictable, but beautiful. And like life, it's not about perfection. It's about expression." By the time Ms. Clark suggested Nathan submit his work to the regional art competition, his skills had blossomed. Yet the idea of presenting his art to the world terrified him. "What if they don't like it?" he asked, his voice laced with doubt. Ms. Clark placed a hand on his shoulder. "Art isn't about pleasing everyone, Nathan. It's about sharing your truth. Trust me, your truth is worth sharing." Her words stayed with him as he sat at his desk that evening, staring at the entry form. He thought about the countless hours he had spent in the art room, the quiet joy he felt with a brush in his hand. Taking a deep breath, he filled out the form and submitted his piece, Resilience. The weeks leading up to the competition were nerve-wracking. Nathan poured himself into his schoolwork and art, trying to distract himself from the impending judgment. When the day of the competition arrived, he almost didn't go. It was his mother who gently urged him out the door. "You've worked so hard for this, Nathan," she said. "Go. Show them what God has done through you." The auditorium buzzed with activity when they arrived. Nathan clutched his mother's hand as they navigated the crowded room. His painting hung alongside dozens of others, each one vibrant and unique. He felt small in comparison, his confidence wavering. As the ceremony began, Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. He barely heard the names of the runners-up being called. When the announcer said, "First place goes to Nathan Whitman for his piece Resilience," his world tilted. The applause was deafening, yet Nathan felt frozen in place. His mother nudged him gently, tears streaming down her face. "That's you, sweetheart. Go." He walked to the stage in a daze, the lights blinding as he accepted the award. When he looked out into the crowd, he saw familiar faces. Derek, one of his tormentors, sitting slack-jawed, Ms. Clark, beaming with pride, and his peers, some clapping enthusiastically, others looking stunned. The recognition from the competition changed everything. Nathan's artwork was featured in a local gallery, and he was invited to speak at a community event about his journey. The night before the event, he sat in his room, nervously rehearsing his speech. "What if I mess up?" he asked his mother as she brought him a cup of tea. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "Nathan, just speak from your heart. Share your truth. God has brought you this far. He won't let you falter now." The next evening, Nathan stood before a room full of strangers, his palms sweating as he clutched the microphone. But as he began to speak, the words flowed naturally. He shared his story, the pain of being different, the isolation, the healing he found through art and faith. Inspired by the impact his story had, Nathan began dreaming bigger. He wanted to help others like him, those who felt unseen and unworthy. With the support of Ms. Clark and his parents, he founded the Resilience Project. The organization started small, offering art workshops for children with disabilities. Nathan led each session, sharing his story and encouraging the kids to embrace their unique gifts. The joy he saw in their faces as they created was more rewarding than any award. Over time, the project expanded to include mentorship programs and counseling services. Nathan partnered with local schools and churches, spreading the message of hope and resilience. His faith, once fragile, became the cornerstone of his mission. Years later, Nathan stood on the stage of his alma mater, addressing a new generation of students. The gymnasium, once a place of fear and exclusion, was now filled with eager faces. "God doesn't waste our pain," he said, his voice strong. "He uses it to shape us into who we're meant to be. Never underestimate the power of your story. You are fearfully and wonderfully made." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Nathan's heart remained humble. He knew the journey wasn't about accolades. It was about the lives he touched and the light he shared. Through the Resilience Project, Nathan's legacy grew, a testament to the power of faith, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The gymnasium at Pinecrest High School buzzed with anticipation. Rows of chairs filled the glossy wood floor where Nathan Whitman once trudged through humiliating gym classes, each step heavy with the weight of his peers' stares and whispered taunts. Today, however, was different. The air was electric with curiosity and admiration, the murmurs of students rising and falling like waves. Nathan stood behind the curtain, his hands resting on the worn podium he'd chosen to use for his speech. His heart beat steadily, not with nerves, but with purpose. He glanced down at his notes, though he knew his message by heart. Years of sharing his journey at churches, schools, and conferences had given him the confidence to speak from the depths of his soul without needing a script. This moment, however, felt uniquely significant. It was a full circle moment. Nathan adjusted his tie, his reflection faint in the polished brass nameplate on the wall. He could almost see the younger version of himself in that reflection, a boy burdened by self-doubt, longing for connection, and praying for a way out of his despair. That boy would never have imagined this day, a day when the gymnasium that once represented isolation would become a place of connection and healing. The principal, Mrs. Grace, stepped to the microphone. Her voice carried easily through the room, commanding attention as she introduced him. Students, faculty, and staff, it is my great pleasure to welcome back one of our own, someone who has taken adversity and turned it into strength, someone who has become a light for so many. Please join me in welcoming Nathan Whitman. The applause was thunderous, filling the space with energy and warmth. Nathan stepped onto the stage, momentarily overwhelmed by the sea of faces before him. He saw eager young students, teachers who had supported him quietly, and even some old classmates. Near the back of the room, his gaze landed on Derek. Derek, once the ringleader of his tormentors, now sat with the faculty. His face was older, but the traces of boyish arrogance had faded. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair, his lips pressed into a thin line. Nathan nodded slightly in his direction before turning his attention back to the crowd. "Thank you for that warm welcome," Nathan began, his voice steady and calm. "It's a strange feeling, being back here. When I walked through those gym doors this morning, I couldn't help but think of the person I was when I last sat where you're sitting now." He paused, letting the room settle. "Back then, I was scared. Scared of being different. Scared of being seen. And, if I'm being honest, scared of never being seen." Nathan took the audience through his story, painting vivid pictures of the pain, isolation, and small victories that defined his early years. He described the humiliation he felt when his limp drew jeers, the loneliness of eating lunch alone in the library, and the nights he cried out to God, asking why he had been made the way he was. "I carried that weight for a long time," he admitted, "but I've learned that sometimes the things we see as weaknesses are actually strengths waiting to be discovered." He spoke of the art room and Ms. Clark, how her encouragement had opened a door to healing and self-expression. He shared how art became a way for him to process his pain and find his voice. As he recounted winning the regional art competition, the students leaned forward in their seats, captivated. "That moment wasn't about the trophy or the applause," Nathan said, his voice softening. "It was about realizing that I wasn't defined by what others thought of me. I was defined by the gifts God gave me and how I chose to use them." He went on to talk about the Resilience Project, the non-profit he founded to help children with disabilities discover their strengths. His words carried a weight born of experience, and his tone was both humble and inspiring. "I want each of you to know," he said, "that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. And your story matters. God has a purpose for each of us, even if we don't see it right away." As the assembly ended, the applause was deafening. Nathan stepped off the stage, shaking hands with students and teachers who came up to thank him. He noticed Derek lingering by the bleachers, his expression conflicted. Finally, as the crowd thinned, Derek approached. "Nathan," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "I don't even know how to say this, but I'm sorry. For everything. For the things I said and did back then. I was a stupid kid trying to fit in, and I didn't realize how much damage I was doing." Nathan studied him for a moment. He could see the genuine regret in Derek's eyes, the weight of years of guilt. Instead of anger, Nathan felt a deep sense of peace. "We all stumble," Nathan said, extending his hand. "What matters is how we rise." Derek took his hand, his grip firm but trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. "I wish I'd had your strength back then." "It's never too late to find it," Nathan replied. Nathan left Pinecrest High that day with a sense of fulfillment. He had faced his past and turned it into something beautiful, a testimony of redemption and hope. Over the years, his story would continue to inspire countless others. The students who heard him speak that day carried his words with them, some even joining the Resilience Project as volunteers. Teachers began to approach their classrooms with a renewed sense of empathy, determined to create environments where every child felt seen and valued. Nathan's work expanded beyond his hometown, reaching schools and communities across the country. He hosted art workshops, mentoring programs, and motivational talks, always emphasizing the message that faith, resilience, and love could overcome even the darkest trials. Years later, a young artist stood in the very same art room where Nathan had found his sanctuary. On the wall hung one of Nathan's paintings, Resilience, the image of the lone flower growing out of cracked pavement. Beneath it was a plaque that read, "Dedicated to Nathan Whitman, whose light continues to shine." The artist, inspired by Nathan's story, picked up a brush and began to paint. And so, the legacy of resilience and faith carried on, proving that even the smallest light can illuminate the darkest corners of the world.